The theory of change, how change happens. Aristotelian ontology said that being had two aspects, form and substance. Thus form and substance were causes. Change of substance was the efficient cause. You push things around. Change of form was the final cause. The acorn's final cause or purpose was the oak tree. In the 17th century, there arose the scientific dogma of the two causes, the material cause and the efficient cause. In Newtonian mechanics, all things stay the same until they are forced to change, and every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Therefore, all change can be described by a mathematical equation. There was no final cause. This worked well with stones. The idea that this is a complete description of all reality is called mechanistic reductionism. Since it is obvious that people do make plans and do make decisions, this is insane. Thus was created the mind-body problem, which was resolved by dividing reality into two realms, the objective realm of objective reality and the subjective realm of the mind or imagination, which was not really real. In the 19th century, Darwin found that mathematics was insufficient as a description of the change of form or morphology. It required a more general and abstract understanding. Change in form was a result of choice or selection, but he retained the intentional fallacy, thus generating the idea of choice without consciousness, that choice was a fundamental characteristic of the universe, which he called natural selection. In the 20th century, the telecommunications people found that radio waves and electronic waves could have form, which they called information. Thus, the relationship between mind and body was that matter and energy were the medium of information and communication. Following Darwin, they described information as selection within a set, and therefore the final cause was communication, which was the translation of choices in one set into choices in another set. Later in the 20th century, the great discovery of cybernetics was that control systems are information systems, and information is neither matter nor energy. You cannot measure it in kilograms or joules. It is form. Form controls matter and energy. As form, it is choice, and thus can function as a command. The final cause was communication. It was feedback, purpose, and adaptation in a command and control system. There were many efforts in the cybernetic community to fit the new cybernetics into the old 17th century two-realm model. We will look at two of them. Von Bertalannfy in 1968 presented the following model. I have added a blue box to indicate the area of mind. Inside the blue box is the subjective world of messages. Outside the box is the objective world of stimulus and response. The problem occurs at the transition points. How do you translate information, measured in binary digits or bits, into matter and energy, measured in kilograms and joules? They don't translate. They are incommensurate. You cannot describe the one in terms of the other. The receptor and effector are supposed to do that, but how? The problem of defining the mind is clear from the position of feedback. Is it information or matter energy? The most popular scientific solution to the problem is to pretend that it doesn't exist. One way to do that is to pretend that information is some kind of energy. Another very popular way is to pretend that it is some kind of probability function. My favorite is, we don't talk about that anymore. The smart people have moved on. They talk about complexity. J. Wright Forrester's system dynamics is also a two-realm model. The information processes are the dotted lines, and the material flows are the solid lines. The focus is on the material flows, the real process. Thus, it is essentially linear. It is not good with holarchies. In the World 3 model, desired inventory and adjustment time had to be plugged in from historical averages. Thus, limits to growth was largely ignored because it did not address the question of how these decisions get made. In mechanistic reductionism, there are no decisions. The boundary problem is solved with the valve, which is in both realms. The information process controls the form of the valve, which controls the flow of material. Information controls form, and form controls matter and energy. In 1956, Francis Crick and George Gamov came up with the central dogma of microbiology, which presents the two-process model of process dualism. There are two processes inside a cell, the energy processes, which we have been calling body, and the information processes, which we have been calling mind. The important one is the information process. Thus, DNA is coded genetic information, which controls the development of the organism, and the medium is DNA, an acid, a molecule with energy. The important one is the information process. How can you have a reality with two different processes? The answer is that reality is a figure-ground gestalt. The basic principle of holism is that it is the whole that gives meaning to the part. The meaning of part number 782,394 is that it is part of an Airbus. Without the Airbus, it's just junk. You have all seen a debris field. You do not get a whole by adding up a bunch of things. You are not more holistic if you add more parts. You are holistic if the whole gives meaning to the parts. The basic form of Gestalt is the figure-ground Gestalt. We perceive the meaning of the figure only in the context of the ground. We can perceive the word figure because it is black against a white ground. We can perceive the word ground because it is white against a black ground. Because we perceive the figure, we don't perceive the ground. I'll repeat that. Because we perceive the figure, we don't perceive the ground. The ground is the whole that allows us to perceive the figure. Thus, there are two ways of looking at reality. Gestalt 1 is our old friend telecommunications. Information and communication are perceived against the background, the media of matter and energy. Gestalt 2 is our old friend physics. Matter and energy are perceived against the background of form, specifically mathematics. Information is the whole that controls matter and energy. Why is that important? Because a cybernetic control loop is an information process.